I call this story My Mother's Gift. Actually, my mother gave me many gifts. For instance, on my 4th birthday, my mother gave me a circus birthday party. The thing I remember is my friends were all gathered around the dining room table, and my 2 older sisters were there. Alice was 10 years older than I, and Patsy was 6 years older than I. And on the center of the mahogany antique dining room table was my birthday cake, a circus. There were 3 rings in the icing and little plastic animals and clowns, and in the center ring, 2 wires coming up out of the cake with a trapeze at the top and a little plastic trapeze artist hanging from it. And over everything was a paper tent. My mother lit the candles and invited everyone to sing Happy Birthday to me. The way I remember it is they got about halfway through the song when it caught on fire. It was very exciting for a little while. Then when my mother got the fire out, I remember my sister Alice standing against the wall of the dining room saying, "Mother, you never gave me a fire in the dining room." I think my mother is also responsible for the fact that we got a color television. You see, my father was never one to buy luxuries. He would always buy us the things we needed, and I guess he thought we needed a television, but we had a perfectly good black and white television, and they hardly ever broadcast programs in color anyway. But down at Mac Electronics, where they sold color TVs, whenever there was going to be a program on in color that night, they would turn on a color set in the front window before they locked up the store. And we drove down and stood outside that window and watched through the glass the miracle, the Bell telephone hour, the women in their beautiful yellow and pink and green and blue dresses dancing in circles. We might have done that a couple of times before my parents sort of lost interest. But I didn't, and I would get on my bicycle and ride my bike from a mile out of town where our farm was down to Mac Electronics at night to watch those TV shows through the window, and pretty soon we had our own color TV. I can just imagine my mother saying to my father, "George, he's gonna get killed." It wasn't a luxury, it was a safety device. And my mother gave me my first leisure suit. Actually, it was my last leisure suit, too. My mother gave me lots of gifts, but these aren't the ones I want to tell you about in this story. The gift my mother gave me that I want to tell you about is the gift of music. I don't know if my mother actually had any formal musical training. I'm not sure how well she could read music at all. But songs and tunes were always coming out of her, just like breath. If it had just been my father, I don't know if I would have even known anything about music. My father didn't sing or hum or even whistle. The story in our family was that when he was a little boy, his parents made him take violin lessons. And at their recital, he and Larkin Coker were supposed to play a duet of Humoresque. But my father was so nervous that when they stood up to play, he forgot what he was supposed to play. So when Larkin started playing Humoresque, my father started playing "Oh, Susanna." I don't know, maybe that's why music was just not a part of my father. But it was my mother. Songs and tunes were just always coming out of her. I have a very dim, sweet memory of lying in my bed at night and listening to her sing to me. Tooralooraloora, tooralooralai, tooralooraloora. Hush now, don't you cry. She sang to me, "Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop." And Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? All the songs of childhood. She sang to me a song that I imagined all mothers must have sung to their children, going back as far as Adam and Eve singing to Cain and Abel. I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck. I was a grown man before I realized that I'm older than that song. That song was written for guys and dolls. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. She loved songs that were filled with harmonies. At Christmas time, she'd sing, silver bells, silver bells. And what child is this who lay to rest? She even taught me nonsense songs like Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? Music was just always coming out of her. I even remember she didn't just sing me to sleep at night sometimes. Almost every morning she woke me up with a song. Bill, time to rise and shine. We would be watching programs on TV like Perry Como, and if he would start singing the Whiffenpoof song, oh, my mother would just melt. Of course, Elvis came along, and my mother did not like Elvis. Like most of the mothers of that time, my mother thought Elvis was a bad influence. But then Elvis came out with this hit. Love me tender, love me true, never let me go. And my mother loved it. From that time on, my mother was Elvis conflicted. My mother gave me the gift of music. She almost ruined it. She made me take piano lessons for 2 years. It wasn't all bad. I did learn how to read music. I learned how to read the notes above the words on the treble clef, and I learned how to read the notes below the words on the bass clef. And that's a useful thing. I also learned that there was something that didn't work between my brain and my fingers. I could read the notes on the page and find the note on the piano and play it, but it took great mental effort to do it. I'm in awe of those people who can sit and look at a piece of music and it just comes out their fingers. But my brain and fingers didn't work that way. I did all right when my piano teacher, Virginia Gray, first started out. She gave me things that only involved one note and one finger. I could find the note on the page and find it on the piano and play it. Then, for some reason, she thought I should use 2 fingers, and that slowed everything down by half. Well, that wasn't the end of it. She discovered I had a whole other hand, and she wanted me to use it at the same time. It was painful. I would practice and practice and practice, but the best I could do was just memorize the notes from the page so I didn't have to look at it and look at my fingers and find where to put them on the piano. Virginia Gray got so frustrated with me that she noticed the second year that I was taking piano lessons that I always wore a coonskin cap to my lessons. Oh, I loved Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was all the craze that year, and she went out and found sheet music to the Ballad of Davy Crockett, and she gave it to me, and it worked. I learned that piece. I memorized all those notes, and I practiced and practiced and practiced until I could play the Ballad of Davy Crockett on the piano. As a matter of fact, to this day, I can play the Ballad of Davy Crockett on the piano, from the wrists down. If I start playing it and I make a mistake, I just have to go back and start over. because the only part of me that knows how to play that is my fingers. As the recital approached the second year I was taking piano lessons, I was excited because I knew I could play the Ballad of Davy Crockett. But Virginia Gray told me, no, I couldn't play that. I had to play something else, something like the Centipede's Waltz. She never explained why, but I figure it's because if her other students heard me playing the Ballad of Davy Crockett, they would have figured out that if they just didn't practice enough, they'd get to play cool stuff too. Well, I showed up at the recital, and when my turn came, I sat down at the piano and I started playing the Centipede's Waltz, or whatever it was, and I got through about 6 seconds of it, and suddenly my fingers froze. They had no idea what to play next. Virginia Gray whispered, "Start again." So I started again. I got through those same 6 seconds or so, and my fingers stopped. They didn't know what to do. She said, "Try it again." And I tried it again, and I couldn't get any further. Finally, she walked over to me. She patted me on the head, and she said to the audience, "You'll just have to take my word for it. He does know it." My poor mother must have been so embarrassed for me that she didn't make me take piano lessons any more. And so she didn't ruin the gift of music. I had music in my head all the time, just like my mama. And anything could trigger a song from me. The weatherman could say, "We're going to have blue skies tomorrow." And for the next 30 minutes, it's going around in my head. Blue skies smiling on me, nothing but blue skies do I see. I can see a robin in the yard. When the red, red robin comes bobbing along, along. You know, sometimes I would get songs stuck in my head, and they'll be there for hours, and it's so hard to get them out of there. The one thing I didn't like about my visit to Disneyland was, for days I went around singing, "It's a small world after all." One day I was standing at the bathroom mirror brushing my teeth, and I heard this. I brush my teeth to Turkey in the Straw. I've just got music in my head, and it's always in there. I'm always whistling or humming or singing or hearing something, some kind of music in my head. In the 9th grade, my parents sent me away to an all-boys boarding school about 50 miles from our home. Now, there were lots of really good things about that school, but one of my favorites was their music program. They had a great glee club, and they encouraged all the boys to sing in it. Over half the boys sang in that glee club, and the school did not schedule any classes during the daily hour that the glee club rehearsed. And I learned so much more about music than I could have learned from my mama. For instance, I learned that I could read music and sing just fine because you don't have to use your fingers when you're singing. And I learned that in music that was arranged for all male voices, the notes above the words were for the first and second tenors, and the notes below the words were for the baritones and the basses. Being a tenor, I sang the notes above the words. And I discovered how to warm up my voice before I sang. Mi, me, mu, mo, ma, mi, me, mu, mo, ma. And I learned that singing in a chorus, the idea is not to be heard, but to listen so that you blend in and sing on pitch. And I was exposed to music that my mama didn't even know about, like Randall Thompson's Testament of Freedom, Mozart's Lacrimosa, Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, and also some music that my mama did know about, like "O Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, you rolling river. I loved singing in the male chorus. Now, when I got ready to go off to college, to Davidson College, which was at that time also an all-boys school, I was really looking forward to singing in the male chorus. It was like if I'd played football in high school, I'd be excited about going off to college and playing on the football team. I got ready for my audition for the male chorus, and when my time came, I went in and met the conductor, Mr. Plott. He was sitting at the piano. He said, "Okay, let's sing this." And he opened up the Presbyterian hymnal to hymn number 1. It was a hymn I'd been singing all my life. "Praise ye the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation." He said, "Now you sing the tenor line," and he gave me the first tenor note. He started playing, I started singing, but it didn't work. He stopped and looked kind of puzzled, and he gave me the note again and said, "Let's try that again." He started playing, I started singing. It still didn't work. He looked really puzzled, and I felt really confused. The next day, I discovered my name was not on the list of the people who had made the male chorus. My name was on another list. He'd put me in something called the chapel choir. The chapel choir practiced for an hour a week and sang at Vespers on Sunday night. At the very first chapel choir rehearsal, I discovered what went wrong at my audition. We were practicing the hymns to lead the singing at Vespers that week, and I discovered my problem. I had been going to all-boys schools so long that I'd all but forgotten about girls. Actually, I hadn't completely forgotten about girls, but I hadn't thought of girls when it came to singing. And when he said, "Sing the tenor line," my eyes went above the words, and I tried to sing the soprano line starting on the tenor note. It just didn't work. The next year, my sophomore year, I got moved up to the male chorus, and I actually became an officer in the male chorus, and I got to sing in an octet called the Lamplighters that sang show tunes and novelty tunes during the male chorus concerts, and even got to go out and perform at alumni functions and things like that. Music was so important to me that all through my years as a minister, I sang in church choirs. Many years later, my mother's heart failed her. I got a phone call that she was in the hospital and went home to Talladega, Alabama. When I first got there, we could still visit with her. We could talk. We could watch television together. But within a few days, she had become so weak that she couldn't talk to us anymore, and finally she was just lying in the bed, breathing. On one afternoon, when I was the only person in the room with her, I moved a chair close to her pillow. I sat down, I held her hand in my hand, and I sang to her. "I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck, a hug around the neck, and a barrel and a heap, a barrel and a heap, and I'm talking in my sleep about you, about you." I knew all the songs she liked. Silver bells, silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city. Tooralooraloora, tooralooralai, tooralooraloora. Hush now, don't you cry. Thing is, every time I started a new song, she squeezed my hand. It was the last time my mother communicated with me on this earth. My mother's gift.